Libs dropped another Epstein hammer, which is the headline if you're looking to Lib News. But we're going to talk about the new revelations that Libs are talking about with Epstein and President Trump and all that garbage nonsense. We're also going to talk to a Korean Scotsman who's been making some waves, calling out the immigration problem in the UK. I call it an invasion, but to each their own. And Operation Midway going on in Chicago. How many people have been taken off the streets and how much has crime been reduced due to President Trump taking an actual initiative in fighting illegal immigration? All that more coming up on this episode of Turning Point Tonight. My name is Joe Bob. Thanks so much for tuning in. Together, we are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. This is Turning Point Tonight. As always, you can email the show, tpt@tpusa.com. We love seeing each and every one of your emails, tpt@tpusa.com. It's been fascinating to go through the different emails and kind of see different people's takes on various things. And I know we don't necessarily get to the emails on the show as often, but I do try to respond to as many as I can, myself and producer Glenn, which I believe we denote in each email that actually gets sent back out. But tpt@tpusa.com is the email address if you'd like to send your thoughts, comments, concerns, even criticisms. We're not libs. It doesn't matter if you agree with 100% of everything we've ever said on the show or you're wrong. tpt@tpusa.com is where you send those thoughts, comments, and concerns. Also, go to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is growing by leaps and bounds, by the way. Our team is fantastic and doing a bunch of stuff, specifically on social media and more specifically on YouTube, that you're not going to want to miss. Turning Point Tonight with Joe Bob, I think is the actual name of the channel. Go follow there because that is where you're going to get stuff that you can't see on this show, as well as, if you miss a segment of the show, that's where you're going to get to go watch it, and you don't want to miss a single segment of the show or else, well, you consider yourself uninformed, to be honest. As you can see, as you can tell, we're not in our normal studio. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona at Turning Point USA headquarters in this fantastic lavish studio, which you can't see this, but it is missing a roof. So it was probably George Soros that stole the roof. But I was here and among other things was able to be on the Charlie Kirk show with Andrew and Mikey today, which is honestly a surreal experience. This is the first time I've been back to headquarters, and maybe we'll talk about that, but it is honestly kind of rough emotionally, but that's pales in comparison to the good folks who work here every single day. So we are live from Phoenix tonight. Again, appreciate you tuning in. I do want to talk about a story that I think a lot of the right has been kind of tiptoeing around, and I cannot figure out why. And that is the newest tranche of Jeffrey Epstein, whatever, honestly. I don't really even care what it is because it is clearly something else that the libs are trying to turn your attention away from. But here's the thing. Is all of the information out that we want? No. And are we frustrated about that? Yeah, probably. But what this new thing is, or the information that I've gathered on it is just another attempt to obfuscate and to turn your head in a different direction when libs are taking a pounding, specifically in this case because of the shutdown, the Schumer shutdown, as a lot of people call it. I like to say Shaco. Schumer always chickens out, because that's effectively what happened with this shutdown. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, but the libs got literally nothing from it. They just kind of upended the government for no particular reason and got zero from it. But because the PR around that was so bad and so terrible for libs, they got to think, what's the new shiny thing that we can point all of our allies in the media towards? Oh, I know, Epstein. What actually got released? Well, there's 3 emails out now from after Epstein was did his plea deal in federal courts. I think one's from like 2012, the other from like 2019. And basically, to me, it's a whole big nothing burger. Just to be transparent with what they say, Epstein apparently sent emails saying Trump is in on it, Trump knew something, Trump knew whatever. And that's effectively it. And what you then have is a guy who's incarcerated, especially in the 2019 emails, an incarcerated person trying to get the best outcome for himself, telling an author that the president of the United States, who has the power, I guess, to do something, knew this or knew that. What it comes down to is this, and we'll get to why they're actually doing it in just a sec. I consistently on this story, unless there is I'm not even going to say that. The last 4 years, you're telling me, if any of this is actually meaningful, what you then have to say is that the last 4 years during the Biden administration, none of this was able to come out. And only now that President Trump is in power, is there any new revelation coming to the forefront. Give me a break. If there actually was any there, everybody and their mother can guarantee you that the Biden administration, which, by the way, prosecuted President Trump erroneously, among other different prosecutorial squabbles that consisted on the left side of the aisle, those people, right, who decided they wanted to try and put President Trump in jail for 700 years, that wanted to prosecute him for crimes that weren't actually crimes, and we don't need to dig into the whole DA Manhattan, Alvin Bragg ridiculous. I almost said a naughty word that I'm not allowed to say on the TV. Ridiculous is adequate though. All of that stuff. You're telling me that they were okay with all of that, but no. The real career ender that it happens to exist in the Epstein files. We're not going to release that, even though we have 4 years to do that. All of that to be said. Therefore, if they didn't do it then, that has to lead me and you to believe that there really isn't anything there that is going to put President Trump in a bad situation. And so because of that, you have to look at the reasons as to why new emails from Jeffrey Epstein or in the Epstein files or whatever are now continuing to come out. And that is, I believe, because they need to turn your head in a different direction. Here's what I think is actually happening. I think there are publicly available a bunch of different things that tangentially tie so-and-so to so-and-so, and they're just holding on to it because, one, they know that releasing it won't actually do anything. It won't actually move the needle in any way, shape, or form. Two, it's not actually legally damaging. I think they're just sitting on it because they know it's for PR, which I think brings us to three. They're using all of these things for PR. The emails that were sent, which again can be dismissed by the fact that you have a guy in prison talking to an author who clearly wants something in it for himself. To say that Jeffrey Epstein was not a clever person would be to mischaracterize him entirely. You've got a guy sending an email to an author trying to wiggle his way out of something by tarnishing the president of the United States. Effectively, it doesn't really qualify on the grounds of blackmail, but at a certain point, it's how are you going to take this serious? Of course, this guy is going to say anything he can to try and lighten his either prison sentence or just overall legal standing. Of course, he's going to say anything. Absolutely. And so then to say that these emails that have now been released have anything to do with anything is meaningless and ridiculous. What they are trying to do is distract. I think they have like a trove of these types of things kind of stored up, and anytime the libs have bad PR, as they have over the last week, again, the Schumer shutdown that didn't actually accomplish anything. At the very least, shutdowns are not necessarily the best way to get policy done, but at the very least, when conservatives shut down the government, they actually get something for their negotiations. President Trump, libs constantly hit President Trump of like, why Trump chickened out. No, he set the bar really, really high and then negotiated down to what he actually wanted. That's called negotiations. In this particular case, that didn't happen at all with the libs. They just didn't get anything for their troubles. They shut down the government for 40-something days, and nothing actually happened. They didn't get anything. Speaker Johnson said, well, yeah, they basically took the offer that was on the table 40-something days ago. This isn't really anything to write home about. But because there is tar on their face, egg on their face, and they are tarred, two different sayings that I accidentally conflated in my own head. Because they've got egg on their face in this particular instance, they think, okay, well, what do we have here that is going to divert attention away from how bad we are? We will do anything except for change our terrible and horrible ideas. And that is what libs are currently doing now. Interestingly enough, Representative Robert Garcia of California, the top lib on the Oversight Committee, in a statement said this: These latest, I'm using my scary voice because they're, again, trying to pretend that this is very scary. These latest emails and correspondence raise glaring questions about what else the White House is hiding and the nature of the relationship between Epstein and the president. Does it really? Does the fact that a guy who, again, was imprisoned trying to wiggle his way into some a minor bit of a elevated scenario, does that actually say something that there are actually ties? Or is it a guy in prison trying to say anything he can to get out of the position that he's in? Also, there's this tweet from Congressman Swalwell that I'm not actually going to read, but it is a classic example of how libs couch things. There's always an out. There's always a no, I didn't actually say that, because he ends the tweet with a question mark, but clearly he's insinuating something that is disgusting and perverse. And again, I'm not going to read it here because it's not worthy of attention, except for the fact that it is a great example of, okay, if you were actually going to say something, why don't you go ahead and say it? All in all, this is what I think. I think that I think that if libs had an email of Epstein, or really of anybody contemptuous that they wanted to tar the president with, I don't know, so and so bad person X said that Donald Duck is my favorite character in the Disney franchise. Ooh, Donald Duck, same name, Donald Trump. Therefore, this bad person is related to Donald Trump in this way. Therefore, Orange Man bad. I don't know if I need to do the hand gestures. I think you probably understand the messaging here. But the end of the day, what this is just another attempt to tar the president with a nothing, and to move the neck of people watching what's going on in politics away from their disastrous shutdown, collapse in negotiation, and on to something else that will continue the deep blue-haired lib orange man bad nonsense that they've been able to fool people with for far too long. Are we entirely satisfied with everything that's been going on regarding Epstein? No, absolutely not. I think I'll be the first person to tell you, yeah, there are some things that we would like to know, but this is a stretch. And because it is such a stretch, and because there's nothing actually there, the only conclusion that you can come to is, yeah, libs are just trying to wheel and deal and move the direction of the conversation in a different direction that makes them look less bad, because that's the only thing they're able to do. They're trying to push the media in a different direction so that they don't look like the dum-dums that they are. And speaking of the media, by the way, I just thought it was really interesting. I was following this story in real time. I was up very early to get on a plane to come here to Phoenix, and was following it in real time. And the first article that I saw, like right when it gets announced, that, oh, look at all of these emails. First thing I saw was an article from the New York Times, and I'm scrolling through the article from the New York Times. Remember, I subscribe to the New York Times to punish myself for my sins. And I do. I read the New York Times quite a bit, specifically so I can know what the libs are saying. And what I thought was fascinating about this is this story breaks, and within seconds, it seems, there's an article out by the New York Times. And not only an article, I'm scrolling, I'm reading, nothing groundbreaking in this article whatsoever, but I'm reading, and I start reading. This is a long article. The listen feature on it, generally speaking, if you have the New York Times app or any other news app, you probably have you can listen to this article. I wasn't listening, I was reading, but it was like 9 minutes. In other words, it's a pretty long article to come out immediately as this announcement is being made. And all that says to me, and I'm not necessarily making the accusation, I'm just putting it into, hey, this is really weird that this announcement gets made from Congress, and all of a sudden an article from the New York Times, the most important newspaper on the planet, is out immediately. If I were a betting man, maybe it appears the evidence suggests that maybe they had some foresight into what was coming down the pike, and that's not necessarily untoward by nature, but at the same time it feels like it gives some sort of evidence that the libs collude with the media on anything and everything that they do, and the compliant media does whatever the libs tell them they should do. Again, I have no evidence of that. This is just anecdotal, saying, there's a really long article that came out really, really quickly. It sure does seem like there was some leakage, and by that I mean they said, hey, go ahead and this is what we're going to do tomorrow. If you could back us up on that, that would be super el gredo. My Spanish is not great. I'm not a lib, so El Grado is what you're going to have to sit with. Coming up, we've got a really interesting conversation with a guy that I found trolling through the internet. He's a Korean Scottish guy, which I'm sure he'll explain to you. But he has made some massive waves in his anti the takeover of the UK, which I wholeheartedly agree with. I'm excited to talk to him. Also, want to talk about Operation Midway, President Trump's Midway Blitz is seeing some drastically reduced numbers in the Chicago area as far as it relates to crime. All that more coming up next. tpt@tpusa.com is the email. Also, go subscribe to our YouTube channel where you get exclusive content, not before seen here. Maybe not today because I'm trying to make a flight, but most days there's an ending segment that doesn't air on TV, and I'm just saying, it can be rather spicy. So you don't want to miss that. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel. tpt@tpusa.com is the email address. We'll be right back after the break. Don't go away. Welcome back to Turning Point Tonight. We're together. Ooh, what was that? That was another George Soros cyber attack. I think the screen glitched there for a second. tpt@tpusa.com is the email address. We love seeing your thoughts, comments, concerns, criticisms, and maybe that's what we'll end up doing. Maybe we'll put like an email section specifically on our YouTube channel, which is my next pitch. Go to the YouTube's, why did I say the YouTube's? YouTube.com. Search Turning Point Tonight. Also on Rumble, also on Facebook, also on X, also on Instagram, all of the social media platforms. But it's where you're going to see exclusive content never before seen on this actual Real America's Voice TV show. Maybe we'll create that one last point segment that just has a comment section reply and email reply. So tpt@tpusa.com and go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yeah, we'll see you on the social medias as well as here on Real America's Voice. One of the things that I think is really interesting today is the numbers coming out of Operation Midway Blitz. If you're unfamiliar, Operation Midway Blitz, I don't know how you wandered on to this show because I kind of all that I want to talk about is with the understanding that you know what Operation Midway Blitz is. If you're not familiar, the very brief summary is President Trump going into the Chicago area and said, hey, all the people that are here illegally, that's not legal, and we enforce the law here at this administration. So adios, bye-bye, sayonara, we're cleaning up the city, or at least as best they can. Here's what's interesting about the numbers coming out of Operation Midway Blitz. President Trump, this is according to Fox News, credits Operation Midway Blitz with a 35% drop in shootings and a 41% reduction rate in robberies. Hold on. Let me just take in those statistics for just a little bit. Chicago, which most people who have eyes and can be honest about the situation around them, look at Chicago and go, oh, this is not safe. This is not a safe place to be. We don't want to be here because it's not safe. And then President Trump comes in and says, okay, so all of the illegals here that are here legally and committing crimes, which remember, that's the priority from DHS, that you're going to get all of the criminal illegals out first. Now, I happen to think you should apply that to everybody, but obviously from a prioritization standpoint, you want the criminals out first. If we get the criminal illegals out of the crime-riddled state or crime-riddled areas, state, being the municipality that is Chicago, not exactly the United States state. If you get all of the criminal illegals out of the crime-riddled area, the crime goes down. I know this is a shocking development in mathematics, but yeah, it turns out if you get criminals off the streets, the crime goes down, which is really interesting in the context of something we've actually talked about before on this show. This is not the first time Chicago has had crime go down. Actually, interestingly enough, in 2016, over a single weekend, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, U.S. Marshals, and extra cops from Chicago decided, hey, let's do an experiment. And what they did is they took a bunch of law enforcement officers from the ATF, from the U.S. Marshals, and Chicago PD, and said, we're going to go flood these very, very crime-riddled areas. They took 3 of the most dangerous districts in Chicago, papered them, flooded them with police officers, law enforcement. And over that one weekend, those horribly dangerous areas in Chicago saw 1 shooting, that was recorded. And citywide, crime dropped 41%, local outlets reported at the time. Okay, so what does this say to us? One, we now have statistics that Trump credits Midway Blitz with a 35% drop in shootings and 41% reduction in robberies. And two, when they decided to enforce the law in the city of Chicago several years ago as an experiment, crime dropped 41% citywide, and in those areas, just one shooting. By the way, to put this in context, there's a lot of shootings most days in the city of Chicago. To say that there is not is to ignore reality, which effectively is what all of the lib leadership in Chicago is doing. What I'm trying to say here is what I think I'm getting at is that the chaos that exists on Chicago's streets is a choice. I know that sounds kind of crazy to say, but really, if Chicago and the leadership wanted to fix the problem, they could. So why don't they? Well, for the very reasons that they could fix the problem. If you're going to say that these problems can be solved because President Trump is doing this with Operation Midway Blitz, and because they did have this one weekend experiment that worked out fantastically well, if they know they can, that means they can't, right? Just to put it in different terms, if they were to fix the problem now, all of the constituents in Chicago that have been voting blue since the dawn of time will actually realize that, holy cow, policing actually works. That is, I think, one of the biggest things that we should have seen out of the Washington, D.C. takeover of the administration. When President Trump decided, hey, we're actually going to enforce laws in Washington, D.C., I think it was like 14 days that the city went without a homicide, which was like the longest that it had. And don't quote me on these actual statistics specifically. I'm just thinking about this in real time. But there was a huge reduction in violent crime all throughout D.C., and that, while is fantastic for people in Washington, D.C., actually was terrible for people in Chicago being the leadership. They realized, well, I say they realized, but this is something that they all should know, because if you have any sort of realistic intuition about the way that people operate, you should know that if there's deterrence to breaking the law, people will break the law less. But they saw in Washington, D.C., and hopefully the entire country saw, it can be done. And if it can be done, the question is then posed to the people currently in office, why hasn't it been done? Right? If for some reason, I don't know, pigs started flying, hell froze over, there was a conservative elected to office in Chicago, they would get the streets cleaned up almost immediately. But because it has been a one-party city in a one-party state for as long as they have, even though they know that they could actually eliminate all the crime that exists in their city pretty much overnight, they don't, because then they'll be hit with questions as to why did you not do this sooner? Like I said, Operation Midway Blitz appears to, according to President Trump, leading to a 35% drop in shootings, 41% reduction in robberies. There was a question we had, my goodness, Trisha McLaughlin from DHS on Charlie Kirk's show today. And I didn't get to ask her, but I really wanted to ask her the question. They're talking about declining statistics, but then she was also talking about all of the violence directed towards ICE agents and directed towards Chicago PD and directed towards really any sort of law enforcement apparatus. And what I would have loved to ask, and maybe, if anyone from DHS is watching now, I would love the statistics if you account for the violence against the enforcement of the crime in Chicago. In other words, if you remove, right, so crime has not gone down, it's gone down 35%, but if you remove the statistics of people committing violent crimes against law enforcement officials, where does the crime drop then, right? Because effectively, by enforcing the law, because libs are so wackadoodle and attacking police officers, they're keeping the statistic higher than it actually probably should be, because that is not getting included in those statistics. So that's the question that I would have liked to ask. I wonder if they could do those numbers at some point. But very, very interesting. President Trump, again, Operation Midway Blitz looks to be a fantastic success. Lo and behold, if you enforce crime, if you enforce rules and laws, crime goes down. Again, I'm not sure how to twist my head around that math, but apparently it seems to work. Who would have thought? Fascinating story. Like I said, we're here at Turning Point USA headquarters, filling in, but on the Charlie Kirk Show today. So if you haven't gotten it, actually that re-airs right after this program. So stick around if you will. You'll catch my face on there saying some spicy things. It wasn't actually that spicy on this show today. But TPT at tpusa.com is the email address if you'd like to send us an email. Your thoughts, comments, concerns, even criticisms, all acceptable. TPT at tpusa.com. Also go subscribe to our YouTube channel, Turning Point Tonight on YouTube, where you get extra segments never before seen on this show, because there's too much to talk about and not enough time to fit it in onto this fantastic Real America's Voice program. We will be right back after the break. Don't go away. Welcome back to Turning Point Tonight, where together we are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. TPT at tpusa.com is the email if you'd like to send your thoughts, comments, concerns, even criticisms. We're not the libs. We don't censor people, even if they disagree with us. You are wrong, but you're allowed to disagree. Also, go subscribe to our YouTube channel, Turning Point Tonight, on YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook. I can't list all of the social media. Just type in Turning Point Tonight or JOBOB. You'll be able to find us pretty much anywhere. I'm also kind of laughing because if there is a segment that'll get us thrown off of the TV, it might be this one. I am super excited to bring in a guy who has angered pretty much most of the internet, but also has been pretty accurate in all the things that he's saying. Ryan Williams is a Korean Scotsman. I think that's what your moniker on the internet says, and has been well known for irritating, let's just say, a large percentage of the UK population. Ryan, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure to be here, man.
So, first of all, very, very Korean sounding name, Ryan Williams.
And when people listen to me, they're like, "Oh, I did not expect you to sound like that." And I go, when I look at myself in the mirror, it shocks me as well.
Yeah, yeah, seriously. But it's I don't know, it's great. It's actual diversity, if you will. Well, I'm not even going to say that because I don't believe in diversity of race. I believe in diversity of ideas. Right. Yeah, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole.
Diversity,
but Ryan,
shared values is.
Yeah. So I came across your Instagram page, several months ago, and thought what you were posting is hilarious and also relatively dangerous, as I'm learning when we were chatting before coming on. We'll get to that in just a second, but just to kind of familiarize our audience with you, Glenn, can we hit SOT 1? This is the type of stuff that you throw out there on the internet.
They banned the Muslim Brotherhood. It's bull. That is a charity in the UK, and we're funding the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a terrorist organization in UAE.
So are you saying that the answer to peace in the Middle East is to expel Islam from the country that would otherwise hold it?
I mean, that'd be nice, but no, but like definitely expel like Muslim Brotherhood.
What is that?
Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization. They're basically the war dogs of Qatar, and they're the ones who are planning the actual terrorist attacks. Imagine the Brotherhood, where you're a young lost individual. Actually, Europe is producing more terrorists than the Middle East in some ways, but Pakistan is, but Europe is coming up with an insane amount of terrorists because, under the guise of charity and funding through Qatar, they are taught essentially everything you need to know to become a terrorist. The extreme prison rates means that they go to prison and then they can become even more radicalized in prison. It's scary that in the UK, the fastest growing religion is in the military and in prisons, systems where you harbor the most dangerous people. That's where this religion is growing the quickest, and it's becoming majority. It's not becoming majority now, but it will, and that's terrifying. What the hell? Eat some bacon before you have to go in there. If you're going to a British prison, you're going to be fed bacon. I don't care.
That's fantastic. So you've made a name for yourself, speaking on the cultural issue of being invaded by a people who does not share the same cultural dynamics and the same cultural processes that you do. elaborate on that a little bit more. Why are you doing this? Because there's obviously a lot of heat being brought on you. And two, what is the ultimate mission?
Look, it's very simple. I'm a Korean guy. I'd be speaking Japanese if it wasn't for the West. I think 74,000 American soldiers died fighting to free Korea. Over 1,000 British and plenty of other countries like Canada came to our aid. And the UK gave me a home. It gave my mum a home. We've had a brilliant life. And it would be a damn shame if I wasn't willing to fight for a country that has done so much for my peoples. It's the minimum I can do. And I'm incredibly grateful every single day to the UK to be there. And the minimum is uphold British values and culture. And when I see these people coming in and taking bloody advantage, it's a disgrace. And we've got good Christian British men, secular or wherever. They're just so nice. Their nature is to be accepting, and everybody, let's accept all cultures. And because they're so nice, they've been taken advantage of. And I can't bear to see that. Obviously, you've got this huge movement fighting back. And I would say that every single legal immigrant, anybody with a different ethnic culture, whatever, we need to stand united against this shithole culture that is Islam.
So you kind of might have answered the question that I was going to ask, but just how did this happen? It's just kind of the apathy towards, we've created this culture and it will always exist, and we don't understand how fragile Western civilization is. Is that kind of the main crux of why we call them illegals, but migrants, immigrants, whatever, have taken over the culture in the UK?
I don't even care about illegals. I don't care if you've got a passport, you're born in the UK. If you are from Pakistan, your family's from Pakistan, and you're first generation, but you're not respecting any British culture, you want to bring over Sharia law, then you can piss off. It's very simple. Why do I do this? Why do I do this? It's because I've got an IQ of over 70. That's why I do this. Western culture is very, very rare. Let's just be real. Any neighborhood with mainly white people and Asians is going to be a safe neighborhood. There are some cultures that just accept each other. When I was growing up, I had so many Scottish brothers come up to me and said, I accept you and I support you as an Asian brother. And it made me feel so good. And now I'm supposed to be embarrassed to say that I support my white brothers? Why is that such a shameful thing to say? I don't think so. White people invented most of the shit on the planet, and they've done so much for my country. Hong Kong, Singapore, great countries. People blame the British Empire for everything. Well, guess what, Pakistan? The only difference between us, economic superpowers, and you is your culture. Get that up your arse. Simple.
Well, and at the end of the day, it really comes down to a cultural thing, right? Nobody actually cares what color your skin is. It's whether or not you share the values. We have this problem in the United States is people coming in who don't share the values of the founding, why the country is what the country is. And if you don't share those values, why would you respect them when you come here ultimately? And it's also, just a weird situation to put yourself in. We really, really hated the place we came from, so we moved to this new place that's better, and because we're in this new place, we're going to try and turn it back to the place that we left. For what reason? I'm not entirely sure how that works. But I wanted to play another.
It works like this. If you inbreed with your first cousin, which is the most prevalent thing in the Middle East, right? Let's just face it. You're going to have a 400% chance more likely to have an IQ of under 70. Now, logic does not apply when you've got an IQ of under 70. It's a big problem. So when I say there are 50 Muslim countries around the world, why the would you move to the West if you want to live under Sharia law? They're going, I have no clue. But we do know the answer. They want to invade. And since they cannot beat you guys with bullets and bombs, they weaponize fertility and ovaries. Simple as that.
They're one problem that we don't have. The one problem that we do have is the fact that we're not reproducing nearly at the rate that we should be in order to maintain a population level. And if you're not doing that in order to maintain the economy, you got to import people from other places, and that obviously has its own problems that I think we've all seen too much of. You had mentioned something before we got on the air that I really, really would love to touch on if you could stick around for another segment. We got Ryan Williams here, who's made a name for himself fighting back against the crazy cultural takeover in the UK. tpt@tpusa.com is the email address if you'd like to send us an email. Ryan will be back. Actually, relatively scary stuff. He doesn't appear to be scared, but he'll tell you about it after the break. Don't go away. Welcome back to Turning Point. Tonight, we're together. We are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. tpt@tpusa.com is the email address if you'd like to send along your thoughts. What do you think about what's going on in the UK? And I guess, I don't know, any ideas of how the United States can kind of help fight back, or at the very least, look at the example and go, yeah, we don't need to do that here. Also, go subscribe to our YouTube channel, Turning Point Tonight, on YouTube, also Facebook and Rumble and all of the other social media platforms that I'm sure you're already familiar with. Rejoining us is Ryan Williams, who, Ryan, we watched a video that I want to play for our audience before this, and this sort of stuff is actually a little bit concerning, especially where you're going back to, and we'll talk about that right after we watch this.
Goodbye and good piss off. Nobody wants your soul culture and camel meat. Take your dirty kebabs and off. I would rather eat bacon and eggs every single day. I didn't come here to eat your dirty halal food. It's cruel the way you kill animals. I would rather have proper British food, sticky toffee pudding with ice cream every single day of the week. Proud of you, Britain. I love your culture, not theirs.
Britain not necessarily known for its food, at least here in the States, but I understand the sentiment there. Also, so Ryan, you talked about you're well, you don't need to say where you are right now, but you're going back to the UK. What is the potential that you face some legal backlash, we'll call it that, for posting some very, very mean things on the internet?
Well, I can get arrested. So over 12,000 people in the UK get arrested for social media posts, which is a little bit nuts. But
very
listen,
nuts.
It's not going to stop me. I say I may be hung like a chipmunk, but I've got enough balls to take on Islam.
I just got that joke. I'm sorry. Okay.
You know,
Continue.
I take a lot of responsibility for my race. You know, like if I have to represent, I'm going to do it with the truth. You know, no matter what.
So but are you concerned at all? Like, because there's a chance you get arrested for posting stuff like that, even though it's hilarious and also accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't particularly want to be in a situation where I have to pick up the soap or think about things like it's only gay if you push back. But prison. I'm a 6'3" South Korean trained. I did MMA growing up, so I'll give the terrorists a good fight. They're inbred and they eat a lot of seed oil, so I'll take them on. Don't worry, you've got some Korean beef in the game. And I was raised by the Brits, and they're the original Crusaders. So wherever I go, I'm going to give it a bloody good shot before I get killed.
So, okay, I'm just curious. You're kind of, I know this is anecdotal, but the institutions that once made the UK great, like the Oxford Union, Cambridge, where free ideas, whether or not you agreed with them, were able to be exchanged. There seems to have been a real loss of that, especially over the last couple of years. Thankfully, the Oxford Union booted out their president-elect for saying some horrible things about Charlie. But what happened to those institutions? And I guess, are you optimistic that they can return, or what's the alternative there?
Well, the main problem is our government, in their infinite wisdom, have elected somebody called Shabana Mahmood. Now, Shabana Mahmood is the Home Secretary.
Traditional British name.
Of the United Kingdom, exactly, Shabana Mahmood. And she has oversight of MI5, MI6, and the police, political oversight. Now, that's like our CIA, FBI.
Yeah.
Now, this is a little bit of a problem because our police are now arresting 12,000 people in the UK for tweets. That's more than Russia, more than China. I mean, seriously, this is a very desperate situation that we're in. Precisely why I want to go back to face arrest voluntarily. I will go back, and I don't give a rat's arse what happens to me. I'm going to fight it to the end. to get free speech back on the table, because what's happening in our country, well, in the UK, is a disgrace. They were there for my peoples in Korea. I'd be speaking Japanese, if not for them. So I'm going back. I'm going back, and I'm going to be there all the way.
Now, I'm looking at an article here that did some polling that Britons overwhelmingly support deporting criminal migrants. Now, I think you're probably in the stance of more than criminals necessarily, but do you think there's enough tailwind on this to actually change the hearts and minds of enough people to take care of the problem? And hold on, but rhetorically speaking, I'm talking rhetorically speaking, because somebody's going to clip that up and twist it in a way that I didn't mean it. But you know what I mean? Electorally solve the issue of the culture being lost to effectively invaders.
Well, I think we have to go further. We have a birth rate problem. As I said, that fertility and ovaries are being weaponized, and they're breeding a lot more. So they're technically going to be British and have British passports. But I don't give a damn if they have a British passport. I'd just take it away and boot them out. You know, if 90% of Koreans were responsible for the child grooming gangs, which the Pakistani Muslims are, they're responsible for 90% of the child grooming gangs in the UK. But if 90% of Koreans were responsible for it, I would say kick all the Koreans out. Me, my mum, my goat, whatever. I would say kick us all out and leave the goats alone. I would take collective responsibility for my people, and I would say this is absolutely atrocious what my people are doing. And believe me, if this was going on, if one Korean was causing this much chaos, all of the Koreans would stand up in the UK and say, yeah, as a society, as Korean people, we failed, and we're going to take responsibility for this. We're not going to go, oh, that's just some, that's not all of us are like that. We're not going to use some crappy, stupid argument like that. We're going to go, we have something in our culture that's causing this. We need to take responsibility.
Yeah, I think the only problem with that is the first point that you made quite earlier on is like, if you can't understand the logic, then there's no way that any of that is going to solve itself, and that seems to be the inherent problem that is facing the UK in so many different ways. This is we're wrapping up here. I think this is just mostly funny and humorous for my own sense, and we can poke some fun at some of the staff here on this show. Hey, Glenn, go ahead and play cut 4.
Hey. You know, eating bacon reduces the chance of you marrying a 6-year-old by 100%. There are 50 Muslim countries in the world. Why the f would you move to our countries if you're not going to adapt to the culture?
That's not me, brother. That's some other random Asian.
So that's the thing, is our racist production staff here pulled that video, even though you posted it. That's not you. And I just...
Hey, it's okay. It's okay. I promoted him. I was just like, good enough. Yeah. Well, now everybody's gonna know that guy is hung like a chipmunk as well. So there you go.
So yeah, it takes a lot of time to put the show together, put all the clips and all that stuff in order, and sometimes one slips through the cracks, but only in the racist heart. Well, hey, Ryan Williams, thank you so much. He's a great follow on the internet. Some spicy takes, but also some hilarious content and shining light on the issue in a way that not many people are willing to do. Lots of bravery there. Ryan Williams, thank you so much. And also stay safe in your adventures. We'll call them that for lack of a better term.
Okay. I won't be picking up any soap.
I appreciate you taking the time, man. Stay safe.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Coming up next here on Turning Point tonight, got not exactly something that we always do, but is appropriate for the time right now. Don't go. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to Turning Point tonight. We're together. We are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. You can email the show, tpt@tpusa.com. Love seeing each and every one of your emails. To be completely frank with you, I have to catch a flight. So in lieu of the last segment, we're going to give you a sneak peek into what you're missing if you don't subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's a mistake as a person, as a patriot, as an American. Go subscribe to the Turning Point YouTube channel where you get to see the afterthoughts of what's going on the show. It is our segment called One Last Point, exclusively for the internet, except in circumstances like this where I have to go catch a plane because I've horrendously mismanaged my time today. But thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow in the normal spot. hopefully, God forbid, something else, some other travel plans come up. But we'll see you then tomorrow, same time, same place. God bless America.
Well, that's a bad idea that for some reason people might think is a good idea. It's one last point. I don't think, let me preface this by saying I don't think this was run up the flagpole as high as I think a lot of the media is pretending that it is. But the idea of a 50-year mortgage and broader than that, the idea of longer terms on loans is a terrible idea. One, because it really doesn't change the price per month paid by somebody. It really just changes the price at which they're paying for it. Let me say that more succinctly. If I have, let's just say, a 5-year loan on a car, right? I can get a 10-year loan on that car. I'm not sure who would give it to me, but let's just say I'm able to get somebody to underwrite a 10-year loan on a car. Well, if I'm already willing to make the payments that a 5-year loan would be, then anybody selling a car would just increase the price of the car if I'm willing to pay for it for 10 years. And a car is not necessarily even the best example because it's a depreciating asset. But in terms of like a house, if you're going to say that somebody is willing to pay X amount of money per month, let's just say $2,000 per month for the mortgage on a house, that's the amount they're willing to pay on that house every single month. It doesn't really matter what the price of the house is. It matters, unless you're buying in cash, but we're not really talking about people buying in cash specifically because of mortgages. But if you are going to buy a house, you're really just looking, can I afford the monthly payment? That's what I look at. You look at the price, but you look at the price relative to what the monthly mortgage payment would be, or the interest rates are. Basically, you have a certain amount of money you make every month, and that's what you use to calculate whether or not you can afford that house. If you stretch the term longer than the 30-year standard, well, the monthly payment that I'm willing to pay doesn't really change, and therefore the house price will just go up because people are already decided they're willing to pay X amount of money per month, right? The idea is that, okay, so if a house is $1 million, and I recognize not every house is $1 million, and, California is a lot different than other places around the country, but just round numbers. If a house is $1 million, and let's just say your monthly mortgage payment is $6,000 a month. Again, I know it's steep. I probably shouldn't be using like Orange County pricing, but let's just say that's the case. If somebody says, well, let's stretch out that 30-year mortgage into a 50-year mortgage, all of a sudden, your house price is going to go up because you've already been willing to make the $6,000 a month payment. It's not like the price of the monthly fee is going to go down. The price of the house is just going to go up, and therefore is a nothing for affordability. And this is a bigger, longer kind of discussion. Right now, so we film these every day after the actual show, talking about the 50-year mortgage thing. And it's a hot topic today, but if this ends up airing on the actual show, when we take a day off or something, it might be seemingly irrelevant. But I think the push for longer term mortgages has been around for way longer than this new iteration of it is. And I think, I don't even necessarily want to call it a bad idea. It's just not going to work, right? Like if you have a longer term on a loan, that affects the monthly cost, but we've already, as a consumer, have decided what we're willing to pay for that monthly cost. So if that monthly cost payment doesn't fluctuate really at all, because the market's already decided that, well, the price of the house is just going to go up, right? $6,000 a month. If you're willing to pay that for $1 million house at a 30-year mortgage, well, you'd be willing to pay $6,000 a month, even though you'd like it to be less. So then the $1 million house now becomes $1.5 million because the term on the loan has changed.